Hi, welcome back to Tack Talks. I'm your host, Jack Brandwood, and this is the podcast where I speak to some of the brightest and most influential people in the tech industry in the UK. This week, I sat down with CTO at Victorian Plumbing, Leighan Mason. We talked about growing a team during lockdown, his unique route into tech, and psychological safety at work.
It depends heavily on ownership and trust. I like it when I can trust members of the teams, and that means that they can take ownership.
More information on this episode and Tack Talks, head over to tact-it.co.uk. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the episode. So Leighan, thanks for coming on. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Good. Saying you've a very short commute from Chorlton today.
Yeah, not much traffic. It was fairly comfortable.
Brilliant. We always like to start these things. I know it's a really philosophical and large question. Can you tell us who Leighan Mason is?
Yes, I can give you my self view of who I think I am. I'm a fairly practical person, fairly pragmatic. I like to take on challenges. I guess in my professional life, I value trust a lot. So I like to give people my trust, and I like to be trustworthy in return.
Love that. And I think, when we met up, God, how long ago? It must have been 3 or 4 weeks ago. Met up for a coffee, and a really incredible. What most of the conversation we talked about was like that psychological safety within your teams, which we really want to touch on. But I guess before that, you're of course the CTO now at Victorian Plumbing.
Sure.
How long have you been there now for?
3 years, 3.5 years. Yeah.
So what was your journey from, I guess, getting into technology to now where you are at Victorian Plumbing?
I didn't embark on a career in IT to start off with. I finished university. I travelled quite extensively. That took me to my mid to late 20s, and then I started working in training / marketing. Working in marketing, there was a Microsoft Access database of sales leads and so on, and I started managing that, and found I had a little bit of a gift for that. So I decided to retrain. I was also had one eye on the IT team and seeing what they were doing, and thought, what, I fancy a bit of that. So I retrained, and then managed to talk my way onto a British Airways graduate recruitment scheme. So was at British Airways for a couple of years down in London. Came back to Manchester, working as a DBA ultimately for a company called Shimadzu, who did pharmaceutical instruments.
Oh yes, yeah.
About 5 years there. Then I took a career break. I have 2 autistic sons, so I spent some time working with them. That was about 4 years. I was sort of working one-on-one with them to help them with their challenges. They were very young at the time. Plugged back in around 2009, I guess, working for 3M, followed by a stint in contracting. Ended up at We Buy Any Car as a contractor, and then took a permanent position as an architect at We Buy Any Car. Worked right the way through their transition from being a startup to being an established company. So did a lot of work there, and then eventually after that moved to Victorian Plumbing.
So you've done loads. And not a traditional route into technology, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, not traditional, and I think you need quite a lot of diversity of thought in a strong IT team. So at Victorian Plumbing, for example, we do hire a lot of people in their second and third careers. They can bring something else to the table that people who've always been in IT don't have. Having said that, we also have people who've been in IT from the start, and they bring something else. They bring maybe a depth of knowledge that people on their second careers don't have yet. Stuff that takes a while to acquire. So I came in on let's say a third career, and I guess that gave me a little bit of extra drive as well. I felt I was playing catch up.
Yeah, I bet. But you got all these incredible life experiences. I mean, the traveling, for instance, right? Things you pick up. Where did you go to, by the way? Where did you travel to?
A year in Switzerland, a year in Germany, 18 months in Japan.
Wow. Okay.
So teaching English.
But yeah, I think just life experience in a way is there's positives and negatives to both entries, right? And
yeah, it was a good time.
One of the things there you touched on, you took a career break, right, for 4 years, after your two sons. It's an incredible thing to do. I wanted to ask how you found getting back into the industry, because I mean, I read a statistic the other day: 87% of businesses and hiring managers don't really see career breaks as a red flag anymore. But that was a while back when you took this career break, right? So how did you find it, like, as you said, plugging back in? How was that?
It was difficult. Yeah, it was difficult to get the opportunity, the break. So it was 2009, which might be before you remember, but that was a difficult time in IT. That is after the big crash in 2008. Nobody was really recruiting, so it was definitely a buyer's market. So when I contacted recruiters saying, hey, I've got this experience, I've been out of the game for a little while, but I'm ready to plug back in, they weren't interested. The message was, hey, the industry's moved on in 4 years. You know, nobody's so everybody's looking for newer technologies, and I don't think it was true. I just think there were more people looking for jobs than there were jobs at that particular time.
Make it even more difficult to get that. Yeah, it just
to get that first break. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've got. I've talked to you before about the initiatives we have, like with the Dev Launchpad and all that sort of stuff. But I always monitor like tech returns very closely and things like that.
Absolutely, there's so many things in place now to facilitate that, which you know it's fantastic. You know, giving people opportunities. You know, there's nothing more wasteful than when you have people with talent that can't get a break, that can't get that opportunity.
Yeah, that's so true. Now you're CTO, Victorian Plumbing, amazing business, and you've been doing amazing things. Been there for 3 years, grown your team out very, very quickly, and a lot. So firstly, I guess Victorian Plumbing, how would you describe the business, and I guess what were you brought on to do?
Victorian Plumbing, it's a fantastic business. It was born out of our CEO's mum's shed.
Right. Okay.
And so it's kind of a family business in many ways. It's maintained the humble nature of its beginnings in many ways. That's kind of part of its identity, quite purposefully. I think if you're humble, then and I mean humble in the sense of the opposite to self-satisfied. You're not at the end of your journey if you've got that humble attitude. You're still looking for ways to improve, in ways to move forward. You're looking for ways to be better, and that's how I would describe Victorian Plumbing. That's its main thing. Because of that, and I put it down to that. It's incredibly innovative. It's looking for places where it can grow, both internally in terms of, okay, how can we do things better, and also externally, okay, what can we do next? And that makes it an extremely exciting place to work. And it's not just talk either. It's if you take that humble outlook on life and you combine it with a kind of self-belief, the self-belief translates into action. And so the desire to improve is there, but it's always matched by action. And I guess that's what's expected of employees, and that's part of the DNA of the company.
So it's like ingrained in just everybody throughout the business, not just the owner, because you get that quite a lot, don't you? Where the owner of the business, of course, is ambitious and has a lot of self-belief and all this sort of stuff, but it sounds like it's trickles down.
It is, yeah, and I guess that comes down to the trust side that I was talking about before. If you allow people to take ownership of things, then a lot of the time they'll deliver. You know, especially if somebody's believing in them, self-belief and belief in your team, then it's an opportunity again. So two kinds of opportunities: opportunity to work on really exciting tech, but match that with opportunity to shine in your own right. Then you're onto a winner, I think.
Winning combination. Okay, love that. And again, you started 3 years ago. So what did the team look like then versus what it looks like now, and why?
So it was just me 3 years ago.
Right.
So I was brought in to build a internal tech team. Up to that point, it had all been outsourced, obviously very successfully. The Victorian Plumbing were a successful company at that time, but had grown significantly, and it was time to bring the IT function in-house, and that's been my job.
So it was offshore originally, was it? And then you.
So the development team was offshore, and the infrastructure team, and by the way, the offshore team, they're still working with us, particularly on the legacy systems. They're still supporting those. Then we have another company called Dolphin ICT, who used to look after the infrastructure. They're still quite heavily involved in the infrastructure. So it's a process. You know, going big bang with these things is never sensible. But we've been growing our team internally and slowly taking over responsibility of things.
And how big is the team now, do you say?
We're currently between 50 and 60.
Wow, that's crazy in 3 years.
Yeah, well, it's been a really interesting time as well with lockdown. You know, when we went into lockdown, we had a team of 10, and during lockdown, I think we grew to around 40 or something like that. So there were people who I knew because of video link. I knew what they looked like, but I had no idea how tall they were. Yeah. So we've been working together for 6 months, and then you meet people and they're giants.
Yeah. Wow, I love that. That's weirdly enough, that's the one thing people always say was the biggest shock when hiring remotely, is like seeing how tall people were. It's weird. Oh yeah, it's crazy. But so why the growth? What happened? What fueled that growth?
Again, you know, this innovative spirit, this humble character that the business have. How can we improve things? How can we be better? Where are we going to grow in the future? So the need for growth has been fueled by the huge roadmap of work that we need to do. We've delivered quite a lot of that, or right on the cusp of other parts, but it feels like it's just the foundations that we've created. So there's a long way to go for us from a technical perspective. Yeah.
The massive growth we're talking about, and of course you know loads of stuff going on behind the scenes. What in particular is going on? What's the goal?
What's the goal? Well, recently we became the UK's largest bathroom retailer.
Wow. Okay.
That's a goal focusing on competition and being bigger than the competition. Actually, the goal is to be the best that we can, to give the best experience to our customers, to make sure that they have the right products at the right prices, to make sure that they can find those products really well, to make sure that their customer service experience is excellent, to look at multiple sales channels that our customers might be interested in engaging in. These are all areas that we can focus on. Extending our product range so that we're offering a more diverse range to a more diverse set of people as well. These are the primary goals of the business. You know, we're always, our innovation is focused on the customer, and that makes it really interesting. You know, I grew up in the hotel industry, and working with people is challenging. You generally need people there at the front of a hotel, and people represent all kinds of challenges, and meeting those challenges from a technical perspective is therefore really interesting. If we want to be able to grow, you know, we need to be able to automate things. We need to be able to make it easier for our customer service staff, for example, who are dealing with people continually. If they're going to be able to give good service, they need information at their fingertips in order to be able to achieve that. So we're constantly improving those things.
Internally, from a technical standpoint, I mean, I guess not. You don't need to talk about the product per se or what you're working on right now, but is there anything that you have been working on that you found difficult? Any setbacks that you've come across, and how did you get around that?
Yes, the biggest risks when you're working in IT are twofold. First, that your architecture has to be right. You know, if your architecture is wrong and you head off in a direction, you're not going to get very far before you're rebuilding everything. The second thing is you're heading off in the wrong direction. You're not creating something for the business. You're creating something that you've envisaged in your head. Everything on top of that is kind of functionality. That's quite easy to manage. On top of that, the changes are smaller. However, you know, getting to that underlying architecture, and with architecture, I guess I'm meaning underlying data models and things like that. Understanding what they are, what they need to be, and role playing all of the different scenarios. That's a really important part, and it's always challenging, especially when you're with a business that's so ambitious and wants to be moving forward. You have to speak quite frankly and openly with the business, understand where they want to go, and this is part of what I was talking about with a diverse team as well. So, you know, if you're bringing in people with other experiences, but also, you know, with diverse ways of thinking, you can take that a long way. So a good developer, for example, will look at a problem and he will role play different ideas in his head. Okay, what if this happens? What about this scenario? And can we still make it work with this scenario? And he'll play through all of these role plays and make sure, okay, my architecture, my data model is going to cover that. But then you might take a tester, and we've got a great team of testers. We like to involve our testers early on in the process. We do, you know, a lot of IT, including my IT, and you know, when I've been a developer in the past, a lot of it is I've finished developing. Okay, here you go, test that now. What we do is we bring our testers in right at the beginning, because we've got some incredible testers that just seem to hone in on problems. They're not testing it actually physically, but they're role playing it in their heads. And they're coming from a different angle. What could happen that could make this go wrong? And that interaction between those two people, the good dev who's role playing, let's say, from the happy path, and a tester who's going, let's think what can go wrong. That saves us an awful lot of time. That means that we're ironing out any problems early on, and we can get a relatively smooth path through to delivery. You know, having said that, you know, we're constantly overcoming problems on the way. A modern e-commerce website, it needs to be incredibly fast, needs to be scalable, but at the same time, you need to be able to manage the content in real time. You need to be able to manage the prices of products in real time. You need to be able to put promotions up in real time as well. Stock availability needs to be it needs to be in real time. So you're not selling stock that you don't have, because that causes problems for customer services. So getting that real-time update with a website that is completely scalable and completely fast, big challenge. So obviously I won't go into the technology that we put behind it, but it's a challenge that we've managed to meet, and the resulting site is really exciting.
One of the biggest things that people always ask me or talk to me about is massive projects, what you've been working on, right? Where do you start? You know, I mean, isn't that the biggest thing? Is like, you've got this massive project, you know exactly what you need to do, then what? Yeah.
Well, you know, I think this is quite a problem in tech. Starting is quite often a sticking point. Ultimately, you have to start. I think you need to understand the essence of what you're trying to do, of what the business needs, and then you're creating an engine. behind that, and that probably isn't a big team on that. That's a small core team because it's quite experimental to start off with. It's understanding the project to start off with, and then once you've got that engine, you've got 1 or 2 or 3 people who are really they've become experts on that particular engine, and then you can build a team around them to actually turn that into a product, and that's when I guess your team methodologies can kick in.
And talking about team methodologies, I mean, that kind of leads me nicely on to what we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast around psychological safety, right? And so what is your methodology when you're setting your team up and managing your team?
It depends heavily on ownership and trust. So I spoke early on about how important trust is to me. I like it when I can trust members of the teams, and that means that they can take ownership. So that means I'm not going to be measuring every sprint. I'm not going to see their sprint speed. I'm not going to be hitting them over the head about things. I'm going to trust actually they are taking ownership of it, and if they're taking proper ownership of it, it's more than engagement. It's taking responsibility for it. It's having passion for what they're delivering, and generally when there's ownership, those things go along with that. All I have to do from that point on is pay attention. Okay, how is it going? I need to make sure that the architecture is right, and I need to make sure that they are developing what the business need. The 2 big risks that I spoke about before. Those are the key things that. But apart from that, I pay attention to how they're progressing, and so that's my side of the trust. So their side is they take responsibility for it. My side is I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to offer support where it's needed. I'm going to be open to your ideas. We can talk about them, and I'm not. It's not just me. I've got a team of senior people also paying attention to these kind of things. And then if somebody needs support, the support is there. If somebody's smashing it and they're totally delivering, then my part of paying attention makes sure that, okay, somebody's ready for something more challenging. We can trust them with more challenging work. They can progress their career. That's the fundamentals of it.
I love that. It's not something I've heard before. Like, it is a two-way street. I think a lot of people talk about psychological safety, and they only think about it from the point of an employee or part of the team. But yeah, it's but then you need to give something back, right? And it's almost like, yeah, you've got to trust me that if you give me your all, I will also repay that in recognition and responsibility. And
it's the main transaction that I see taking place. One of putting your trust in your team, because without a team, and without a team that owns things, you're not going anywhere. Sure. But you have to be trustworthy, and you have to repay that trust ultimately. Yeah, and psychological safety, that's it can be a very big topic, but from my perspective, what that means is I have to greet good news in the same way I treat bad news. If somebody comes to me with bad news, then I can do something about it. If somebody doesn't come to me, then it becomes a bigger problem. So good news and bad news, I have to do my best to treat them the same way, exactly the same way. And the same with really good ideas and ideas that maybe I don't think are good. The fact is that when somebody comes and gives me one of their ideas, they're taking a risk. They're for that moment they're vulnerable, because it's really easy to criticize people's ideas, but actually I want to welcome people's ideas, because that's how you get the best ideas.
Yeah. There's always a study that I refer back to, and it's this. I think I might have mentioned it when we first met up. Was about this escape room, and they'd had like a group of 5 white men or whatever, did it in X amount of time, and then they started introducing people from different backgrounds, and even when they took out like language, they still did it quicker, because not only did they have the experience, like the difference of backgrounds from people within the group, it's also like the people within the group started to think differently about the way they were behaving and the way they were interacting with people. And it would just, the times obviously were quicker and quicker and quicker.
So interesting. Yeah. The, approaching problems from different angles.
Yeah.
Given people's different backgrounds. You need that.
It's great to hear that Victorian Plumbing are doing that, because, a lot of the time, especially with ideas as well, from an idea perspective, you're only getting ideas from the person at the top a lot of the time, and it's just like being passed down and passed down. I think not only does that not allow for ownership of ideas, whether it be good or bad, because they might not go right, but also then you've got, again, that kind of difference of different backgrounds. The different backgrounds are contributing to different ideas that you would never have normally thought about. I mean, we do something at Tact that we, for every idea that comes up, as small as it may be, whether we need new tea bags in the kitchen or a whole process that needs redesigning, they give them £100. Like, it might sound like bribery, but when it gets to a point, people might say you might not have any money left, but the idea is that we get to a point where the business is that good because we've got all the ideas possible in a way. That's something we do, and it works really, really well.
And how much more motivating is it for somebody if they're working to prove that their idea works?
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen that within Victorian Plumbing.
We have a really strong team of talented people, all with different perspectives on problems. Everybody working to to meet challenges from different angles. Everybody taking responsibility and ownership of their particular area, and that's the other thing. When people are given individual responsibility, rather than saying that there's a team and this is your project. If people are given individual responsibility, kind of like if you think about a football team, you've got a left back. That left back's got individual responsibility. So is the goalkeeper, so is the striker. They've all got, but together they come together with group responsibility. But that individual responsibility, it means that you don't have to measure as much. If somebody is completely, smashing it and properly delivering and more so, exceeding expectations, that's evident. And therefore that opportunity, I guess that's my job. Part of my job is to say, okay, they had that opportunity, they've exceeded that. What's next for them? How can we take that opportunity and realize it and help them to grow in their careers? So that again, that's my side of the trust bargain.
And look, it's clearly working. You've been growing like crazy, and amazing things going on. Anything we need to keep an eye out for on Victorian Plumbing? Anything in the works that you can tell us about, or is it all top secret?
Yeah, obviously we are releasing a new website with a whole ton of other services behind it, and I'm not going to talk beyond that we've got a lot of really exciting things in the pipeline that obviously I don't want to make public knowledge just yet. I think as a whole, as a company in the tech space, but in the wider space, in the retail space, it's a really interesting company to keep an eye on.
And you've got amazing offices in the city centre, haven't you? Whereabouts are they? Are they
Arkwright House? Yeah.
Passage Gardens, yes. And how often are people in?
So, well, that's interesting. So we had a team of 10 when we went into lockdown, and we got very good at communicating remotely with each other. And then lockdown ended, and we thought, well, everybody was saying, "Oh, I miss the office." People still miss the office, especially when we were just 10 people. It was kind of small, intimate. We had good fun, and we were working together on things. But we got the office, and so now we can offer people working in the office or working at home. We have I don't know, maybe about 10% of our people use the office regularly.
Right.
Not a buzzing office that we would experience of old, but our Slack channels are buzzing, and people are on constant call with each other, pair programming remotely and working out problems remotely, and we've got quite good at that.
One of the things that keeps coming up just at day to day is when a CTO or a technology director or someone in charge of a big tech function is trying to get the remote working is just part of the way people work within the business, you know, and trying to get it past the higher ups. And a lot of the time there is a bit of struggle because tech is such a different industry to any other industry within the business. To go to the owner of a business or the founder and be like, well, we need to be 100% working from home, it's kind of hard to communicate sometimes. And yeah, did you have that experience?
When COVID landed, there were 10 people. The business was dependent on 10 people. So we actually, just before lockdown, we went home. I actually caught it, and there was a risk that we didn't know the extent to which it would spread. Luckily, nobody else in the team caught it at that point. Right. But I caught it. I said, you know what, we need to make sure the business is safe. So let's quarantine for a little while. Everybody went home, and we didn't end up going back into the office for some time. That was a sensible precaution from the business's perspective, and there was no pushback from the business. When lockdown ended, I think the business were asking questions. Okay, so do we want to go back into an office? I said, well, some people are really keen to go back in the office, so we put an office in place. And it's become clear that actually, the office we put in place was a bit too big. So some people enjoy going into the office and having that part of their daily routine. Other people become embedded in home life during lockdown, or became embedded in home life during lockdown, and it's difficult to extract yourself from that. So from my perspective, because it's very transparent to how people are delivering, I don't really mind where they work, as long as they're achieving results, as long as they're owning the results, and they're interested in their work, they're passionate about it. I don't have a worry in the world.
Yeah, and as it should be. And I know there's sometimes in certain businesses it's kind of hard to make people who aren't involved in tech day to day understand what the industry's like. But it sounds like that wasn't the issue at Victorian Plumbing. I mean, and seems very forward thinking.
Incredibly so. Yeah, incredibly so. Most of the time, 90% of the time, is simply more productive. As a dev and as a tester, holding all of those scenarios in your head when you're trying to work something out. And sometimes it might take you 10 or 15 minutes to get a situation in your head, and you probably write it out on paper, and you're just about there. If you're in the office and somebody says, hey, what are you doing for lunch? It's all gone. It all disappears, and then you're back to stage one, 10, 15 minutes more, just trying to pull it all in your head. Extremely frustrating. When you're at home, you have the freedom to be able to do those kind of things, and you can contact people through Slack when you need to speak to them. So there's a little bit missing, and that's the office culture kind of thing, and that's a problem that I need to solve. And I think essentially it's having reasons to go in en masse into the office, events, purposeful reasons to gather, because encouraging people to go into the office is, if they don't want to, it's a lost cause. You go into the office and you end up on Slack with people who are at home. What's the point?
I think that's it, really. I mean, it's been amazing having you on and just talking about what Victorian Plumbing are up to, what you've been doing over the past 3 years, your views on leadership, and everything in between has been really enlightening and powerful. And I think a lot of people who are listening to this will get a lot from it. So really excited to see the new website up and the other stuff that's going on. I don't know, but thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
I've enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
And that's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Anything we talked about will be linked in the show notes, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and we'll catch you on the next one.